What's up gamers, Ruben with NerdSpace here, and of course today we're going to talk about Resident Evil 9. Specifically, we're going to talk about different leaks and rumors relating to this game, because it seems like more and more information about this game keeps getting leaked and released. And of course, you know, leaks, always take them with a grain of salt. We don't really know which ones are actually true. Even the most reliable leakers out there give us some information that turns out not to be true. But I figured it would be a fun video to just kind of list off maybe the 10 biggest, most likely leaks and rumors out there right now that are kind of circling around the internet, and kind of give you guys my opinion on each of these. Also, before we jump into today's video, I want to let you guys know that this list is in no particular order. It's pretty much just taking 10 different leaks and rumors talked about that is circling around the internet right now and just putting them on a list together. That's it. So don't see any kind of hidden message between number 1 and number 10 on this list. But with that out of the way, let's jump straight into it. Number 1, the release date. So thanks to a pretty reliable source when it comes to leaks for Resident Evil, Dusk Golem, it looks like that there is a strong possibility that we are going to see Resident Evil 9 released in 2025, with the reveal being in summer of 2024. Dusk Golem is a pretty reliable source when it comes to leaks for Resident Evil games. He was one of the first people to talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake before it was revealed. So like I always tell you guys to take any rumors or leaks with a grain of salt. I will say that this leak right here probably has the most credibility for a couple of reasons. One, Dusk Golem, like I mentioned, is a reliable source, but more so why this does make sense is because we just got Resident Evil 4 Remake this year. And then there are a lot of rumors surrounding the fact that we are going to get a Separate Ways DLC released sometime either late this year or early next year. And if that's the case, I can't see a full-blown Resident Evil title releasing the same year, which means I don't see Resident Evil 9 releasing in 2024, and it does kind of make sense for it to release in 2025. As far as the reveal being in the summer, that also has some credibility, because we have seen Resident Evil games before announced during the summer. Actually, that's probably the most likely possibility when it comes to when Capcom is going to reveal this game. Summer seems like the perfect guess, in my opinion, as far as a reveal date. Apparently, Capcom plans to continue to release a Resident Evil title, either a remake or sequel, every other year. So every 2 years, we're going to see some sort of Resident Evil game. And first off, I want to say I absolutely love this because, you know, I am a huge Resident Evil fan. If you guys don't pay attention to my channel enough, you would probably not know that I just talk about Resident Evil nonstop. As a matter of fact, I have a day of the week designated to Resident Evil going forward. Monday is my Resident Evil day. You're going to see some kind of list video or something regarding Resident Evil. So hearing that I'm going to get a new Resident Evil game every other year, that sounds pretty amazing to me. And this leak does kind of line up with what Capcom has already did. We've seen Village released roughly 2 years after Resident Evil 2. We've seen Resident Evil 4 released 2 years after Village. And now with the potential leak that Resident Evil 9 is going to release in 2025, yeah, this does seem likely in terms of what Capcom is wanting to do. Hopefully they stick to this, because I wouldn't mind getting a Resident Evil game every other year. I don't know if I would want one every single year, because I want the game to be polished enough to where it's good. You know, I don't want a repeat of Resident Evil 3 Remake, so I think 2 years is a perfect amount of time for Capcom to work on each Resident Evil installment, to where the remakes and the sequels can all be amazing, and of course that's what we all want. Number 3, no Winters family. This really shouldn't come too much of a shock, because this is less of a leak. I mean, it's a leak because there are sources talking about the fact that the Winters family is not involved with this game at all. However, we did hear Capcom officially announce a while back that Shadows of Rose was going to be the conclusion to the Winters family saga. So technically, we had Capcom tell us themselves that the Winters family was not going to be involved with Resident Evil 9. But for some reason, people are not letting that die. People seem to think that Mia or Rose are going to be somehow involved with this game. which kind of brings me to the next thing that I'm going to talk about, which is kind of connected with this one. So I'm going to put them together. But the timeline for Resident Evil 9, apparently it's set between Resident Evil Village, takes place directly after Village, and is long before the DLC Shadows of Rose. And if that's the case, that pretty much just guarantees that we're definitely not going to see anything from the Winters family. Mia's going to be too involved with trying to take care of Rose, and Rose is just going to be a baby. So yeah, I completely would be shocked to see the Winters family involved in this game in any way, shape, or form. Who knows though? I could be proven wrong, but I'm willing to bet everything on the fact that we're not going to see the Winters family, or if we do, it would be like a small little smudge, like a small little cameo. Number 4, the main character and playable protagonist is Chris Redfield. Again, this is another leak that I actually kind of agree with. Now, this one is actually coming from Reddit versus Does Gollum, but it does make sense when you think about how Resident Evil Village ended, because at the end of Village, we see Chris Redfield learning that the BSAA has been using BOWs, and he decides to head straight to Europe to figure out what the hell is going on. And if this game is set to start directly after Village, it does make sense that Chris Redfield is the main protagonist here, because he's the one that wants to stop the BOWs with the BSAA, and he has a strong connection to the BSAA. I mean, we've seen Chris Redfield with the BSAA since Revelations. So that whole reveal during Village at the end of the game about the BSAA using BOWs was a huge moment, and it was a huge reveal. And for Capcom to just kind of brush that to the side or push that twist on a different character other than Chris, it doesn't add up in my opinion. So it does make sense that Chris is going to be the main focus point of this game. Number 5, Resident Evil 9 Apocalypse. Yeah, so apparently that could potentially be the title for Resident Evil 9. It kind of works well with the Resident Evil series. Apocalypse does sound good to me. As far as how reliable and likely this is, I'm hesitant about it, because when this name first kind of hit the internet, it was pretty much said that this was supposed to be the working title for Resident Evil 9. And we don't really ever see the working title turn into the actual title for the game. However, more recently, we are seeing more rumors and more leaks actually suggesting that this is indeed the name for Resident Evil 9. And like I said, it does sound good. It looks right. Someone also mentioned that apparently the Roman numerals were going to be inside Apocalypse somehow. You guys are going to have to help me out here, because I can't picture how that fucking works. Am I stupid? Am I missing something here? But regardless, Apocalypse does make a lot of sense for the Resident Evil franchise, and I'm for that name. I'm down for it. Number 6, we're going to see a Windigo. So regarding the villains of Resident Evil, we've seen so many different types of creatures throughout the series. However, in Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8, we've seen Resident Evil kind of go the direction of paranormal and supernatural, and even really mythical in Resident Evil Village. We've seen a lot of mythical creatures in Resident Evil Village. So if Resident Evil is going to continue the trend that it's been on lately, then I would expect that we are going to see more mythical creatures. And apparently one of the most popular concepts that are circling around the internet is the fact that we're going to see Windigos. And I love this idea, because it can really make Resident Evil 9 one of the scariest games in my opinion. So first off, if you don't really know anything about Windigos, they are some monstrous, scariest creatures, usually living in like the woods or some rural areas, and they feed on human flesh. Of course they do, it's Resident Evil, so it makes sense. However, what really makes the Windigos badass and could potentially be the scariest villains in the series is the fact that they have the ability to shapeshift into humans. So they can shapeshift into your best friend and pretend to be a partner of yours, and then turn around and fuck you up. And I love that idea for a Resident Evil game. I love not knowing which NPC is my ally and which NPC is my enemy. I love the concept of that, and I hope this part is true. Do I think it's likely? I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on this. It does make sense because of the mythical creatures direction that Resident Evil Village went, but does that mean Resident Evil 9 is also going to continue down that road. They've seen a lot of popularity come out of Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil 2 Remake. Maybe they go towards that gory, typical monster aesthetics. I don't know. But I will say, having a Windigo as the main type of enemy variation in the game is going to make it very interesting, and I hope that is the case. Number 7, the style for the game is apparently going to be third person, very similar to how the remakes have been lately. And I know this is probably going to disappoint a lot of people because everyone kind of likes the idea that maybe 7, 8, and 9 is kind of its own trilogy. And the whole first person perspective has kind of recreated the fear of the Resident Evil franchise. And while the remakes get to focus on that third person perspective, I know a lot of people really like the idea that maybe the newest trilogy, Resident Evil 7, 8, and when 9 releases, would focus on that first person perspective. So that way we're getting a different style Resident Evil game every 2 years instead of kind of a similar style. However, a lot of the leaks and rumors are suggesting that that's not the case. And honestly, it does kind of make sense for Resident Evil 9 to be in third person. Think about some of the hints we got. They have seen a lot of success in the remakes with a third person perspective. And what really makes that even more important is that we got a third person perspective recently for Village, and the Shadows of Rose DLC is also in third person. So you can see Resident Evil seems to kind of be leaning more towards that third person versus first person now. So it wouldn't really shock me that much to see Resident Evil 9 as a third person game. Is that what I want? Honestly, I'm kind of indifferent because I do love the third person perspectives. And I think Resident Evil 7 was one of the scariest games, and a big reason for that had to deal with the fact that it was first person. I kind of like the idea of having a little bit more variety, so I like my remakes being done in that modern third person perspective, and then maybe just keep the sequels, or at least this last one just to finish off the trilogy, as a first person game. I don't know, guys, you guys are gonna have to give me your opinions on this one because I really don't mind either way. But I don't know, guys, let me know in the comments, which perspective do you rather see? Do you rather see them stick to the first person just to finish off the trilogy? Do you rather them do it in the format of the remakes where we see it over the shoulder third person? Or hell, do you want to go back to the original Take Control's third person perspective? That sounds pretty cool too, but I think that's very unlikely because as much as it kills me to say this, that era is kind of a dying era. People like us old school Resident Evil fans, we don't really get those type of games anymore unless you're playing like an indie game. Number 8, another castle is going to feature in Resident Evil 9. So apparently this castle is going to be very similar to Lady D's castle or Ramon Salazar's castle. How do I feel about this? Well, I mean, I've kind of seen the castle aesthetic enough times now to where I really don't need to see it a third time. I thought Lady D's castle was alright. I thought Ramon Salazar's castle was the best location in Resident Evil 4 Remake. But ultimately, I don't think I need to see yet another castle. And if they are going to do another castle location in Resident Evil 9, then they really have to make it stand out more than Salazar's or Lady D's castle. To be honest, they are going to Europe, so I would like to see a more medieval, historically correct castle, maybe see something like that might stand out a little bit more from Lady D's or Salazar's castle. But I don't know, I'm like 50-50 when it comes to the castle. Let me know, are you guys excited about yet another castle in Resident Evil 9? Number 9, Jill Valentine is going to be a supporting character, and apparently she's going to be very similar to Ada Wong in Resident Evil 4 Remake, which if this rumor and leak is true, then God bless, because Jill Valentine needs to come back in the number entries. Don't get me wrong, she is not the most robbed goddess of the series. There are plenty of other characters that need to make a comeback other than Jill Valentine. However, if you're going to bring Chris Redfield as the main protagonist of the game, and you're going after the BSAA, Jill Valentine seems like a must-have for this game, assuming that leak was correct. And other than Death Island, which I don't count because it's part of the movies, I know they're canon, I get it, but I want my story to be contained in all the games. But other than Death Island, we really haven't seen Jill since the events of Resident Evil 5. We don't know how she's doing, we don't know how she's taken in the whole situation about Wesker controlling her. Again, I know we saw this in the movie. I'm avoiding the movies, even though they are canon. I want to see it play out more in the game because I want to have more time kind of experiencing that. With the movies, you have about 1.5 to 2 hours of screen time to kind of play with these characters. With the game, you have so much more time to build up on that character's experiences, and I feel like we can see more of how Jill is handling everything in the game than we saw in the movie. Also, Resident Evil 9 would take place a lot farther down the timeline than Death Island, which means we can see where Jill is at in the timeline of Resident Evil 9, because all we really know is that Chris Redfield works for the BSAA. He is tasked with working alongside Blue Umbrella, and that he has his own squad known as the Wolf Squad. However, for some reason, Jill is not a part of this squad. We don't see any mention or talks about Jill Valentine. So it would be interesting to know, is Jill still with the BSAA? What is she doing? How is she doing? I would like to see more about that. The only sad part about this leak being true is that they mentioned that Jill Valentine will be a supporting character, and it will be similar to Ada Wong in Resident Evil 4 Remake. Well, guess what? Resident Evil 4 Remake didn't have Ada as a playable character in any situation at all. I'm sure she'll get her DLC, but as far as the main game, you can't play as Ada at all. Which, if this rumor is true, Jill's going to be similar to that, which means we are going to get story details. We're going to get to connect with Jill. We're going to get to learn a little bit more about her and how she's been, but we're not going to get to play as her. And I'm like, Capcom, that hurts, that stings. But number 10, which is probably the wildest and craziest leak and rumor about Resident Evil 9, and just in case this is true, I don't think it is, but just in case it's true, I want to say, spoiler, potentially, if this turns out to be true, I don't want you guys to crucify me at all, but this relates to a character, a main character of the franchise dying. So I'm going to give it a second. All right, here we go. Apparently there are rumors and leaks that have gained a lot of credibility for whatever reason that Claire Redfield is going to make an appearance in this game, and she is going to die. Apparently at some point during this game, Chris Redfield is going to have to make a choice to either save a ton of different people, save the world potentially, or save a high population area or something like that, or save his sister. And he's going to have to make one of the most tragic decisions of the series, and he's going to have to save the people, and therefore he's going to have to watch his sister die. That is what one of the biggest rumors and leaks are going on right now. Again, this is probably not true. This theory just seems really completely out there, and if it is true, guys, I am sorry for spoiling it for myself and for you guys. But honestly, if this does turn out to be true, it actually makes me sad that this might be Chris Redfield's last game, because I would like to see so much more expansion on that. Now, maybe it happens earlier on in the game. Maybe it happens at the start of the game. Then we can see Chris kind of building up from that. Chris has sacrificed a lot during his battle against BOWs. And to see him lose his last family member, his only sister, his only family, to a BOW, damn, that could be huge, and it could show a different side of Chris, a darker side of Chris that we haven't even seen, not even in Resident Evil 6. I think this would push Chris even farther than that. But that's gonna do it for this episode of Nerd Space. Guys, hit up the comments, let me know what you think about all of these different leaks and rumors. Which ones do you think are true? Which ones do you think are really cool? And which ones do you pray to God is not true at all? Because I know there are some of them in here, especially that last one I just mentioned, that you probably hope and pray isn't legit. But anyways, guys, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like or dislike button if you enjoyed or hated this video, and share this video with your friends and family. And as always, I'll see you on the next episode of Nerd Space. Take care.